Hi there! Quick video. I wanted to share with you, I have just planted my sweet potato plants, and let me tell you a little bit how sweet potatoes work. Hang on, just let me get this turned around. So sweet potatoes are a little different than white potatoes. So white potatoes, you get what looks like potatoes. They are potatoes that are seed potatoes. They're basically just potatoes that haven't been treated to keep them from sprouting. And you plant them. And you want to make sure that when you do that, they have some eyes on them, some little nubby things. And then those seed potatoes will kind of disintegrate as the plants grow from them, and then those plants in their roots area will grow potatoes. And that's a simplified explanation, but that's basically what happens with white potatoes. Sweet potatoes, on the other hand, you want to grow from what are called slips. So basically, slips are tendrils or plants that grow off of a sweet potato. You cannot just plant, well, at least not very successfully, take a sweet potato, plant it in the ground, and it grow into sweet potato plants that then produce sweet potatoes. What you want instead are what are called slips. So you take a sweet potato, and there's lots of videos on Google or YouTube you can search for, where you take a sweet potato, you stick it halfway into some potting mix, and then you keep it damp, and then eventually little things will start to grow off of it, little plants basically. And then once those plants have grown enough to have a little bit of roots also going down into the potting mix, you then snap them off. And what most people do is they snap them off, put them in water, and let them get more roots, and then you plant them outside when it's going to be warm enough for the sweet potato plants to thrive. What I did this year was that. So these here are some slips. They're called slips when you do this, that I grew off of a couple of sweet potatoes that I put in potting mix probably a month or two ago. I can't remember exactly. And here you can see where I had a lot of roots going down into the potting mix from the sweet potatoes. So as an experiment, I've planted 5 slips that I got, and one piece of the sweet potato that was connected to all those roots, I went ahead and left this sticking up in hopes that one of these types of plants will then grow out of that, using those roots that have grown down into the potting mix from that piece of the sweet potato as their root structure. So we'll see. That's the major experiment. And this one is actually the first slip that I got that I broke off. It had a decent amount of roots, and so I put it in its own little pot with potting mix and let it just grow into a plant. And so it has a very substantial root structure. And this one is another one that I did that with. The plant itself died when I put it in potting mix, but then it came back. So those roots are can be very healthy and vigorous. And then these 3 are slips that had some roots that had grown on the other sweet potato I had. And so I was able to snap them off with a little bit of plant, a little bit of roots, and all of these got planted yesterday. And then these slips came from a company here local to my state that sells sweet potato slips, and they send them to you in the mail. So when these things came, they looked basically like this, with no roots on them for the most part. And they were packaged in a package that had a little bit of like a potting mix or fine silty dirt at the base that was damp, and then wrapped up so that it would stay damp in transport. And the directions said, take these, put them in a cup of water, change the water out every couple days as needed to keep it clear, and they will root. They will form roots. And as you can see, most of them also started to form plants, leaves. So that is what these are. Now this one is looking very sad. It was starting to kind of disintegrate a little bit, but it had a decent amount of roots. So we've planted that one. Same thing with this one. The actual stem, not looking so great, but it has a good amount of roots. And this one has not grown any leaves yet, but it again had a pretty substantial root structure and it wasn't smushy. So we'll see what happens. But that's basically what you do to grow sweet potatoes. And then the variety that I have here are all Covington. So are the ones that I have, because those are from sweet potatoes I grew last year. That I got the slips from a different company, but they were also that same variety, Covington. It tends to do pretty well. It's the look of a sweet potato that I like, where it's an orange flesh and a little bit lighter skin on the outside, fairly tender skin. So it's the type of sweet potato I would buy at the grocery store. And something recently that I learned is that this variety is what's called a bush style. Now, the vines will kind of go everywhere, but for the most part, the sweet potatoes grow where the base of the plant is. And so it makes it easier to find the sweet potatoes when it comes time to harvest. I have noticed, though, if you let the vines find a spot to rest and send out roots, at that spot, it's basically making another plant, and so you would get sweet potatoes where it's rooting potentially as well if it has enough time for them to form up. So that's a very quick video, hopefully, on how to do sweet potatoes and to document my progress this year. I'm going to be comparing the slips that I started versus the one that I purchased. The ones that I purchased, and see how that goes, and hopefully I get a decent amount of sweet potatoes that will hold all the way until next spring. And if this goes well with the ones that I started, then I don't ever have to buy plants again. I can grow my own and have sweet potatoes ongoing through the years with no extra cost. So thanks for joining me here today in Aunt Susan's garden.